Hey guys, tonight we're sneaking into ancient Babylon, but not for some grand battle or legendary treasure. No, you're just on guard duty. Yup, the peaceful, very not glorious kind. You're standing in a stiff linen sash, facing the sunrise, while the bricks of the great Ziggurat glow like warm honey under a sky that still smells of ash and dew. Your spear's wooden shaft creaks slightly in your hand, more from the dry air than danger. It's already going to be a long day on. You haven't even finished your first breath yet. You're not guarding treasure. You're guarding peace and goats. A lot of goats, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is just to prove you're not the only one up listening to ancient Babylonian goat shuffle stories. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun slides into place like a smug loaf of fire bread, warming the eastern face of the great Ziggurat. You're posted halfway up the first tier, near a crumbling mud brick bench no one's repaired in weeks. Pigeons coo somewhere behind you, possibly planning another coordinated feather drop. You stretch your arms, yawn, and tap your spear gently on the ground, not out of threat but to make it look like you're paying attention. Truth is, your duties are more ceremonial than necessary. No one's attacked a Babylonian temple in years, unless you count that one time the baker's donkey got loose and tried to nibble an incense offering. You watch the other guards rotate in, all dressed like you in simple linen kilts cinched by leather, belts that squeak when they move. There's Kadash, the tall one who always walks like his sandals are too tight, and Lugal, the one who pretends to know what all the stars mean. Together, you form the least intimidating triangle of sleepy defense since the invention of night. Below, priests begin filtering into the courtyard, rubbing their eyes and muttering prayers. Their voices sound more like sighs than divine utterances. You nod at them. They don't nod back. They never do. There's a hierarchy to this place, and you're somewhere near the bottom, just above the latrine boy, and just below Ninkasitha temple cat, who somehow outranks you. Still, the view makes up for it. The Euphrates glints in the distance, lazy and wide, carrying boats full of date wine and gossip. The city beyond the temple walls begins to blink awake, with the calls of vendors echoing faintly through the cool morning air. You watch a potter haul out his wares, stacking sun-dried clay jars that look suspiciously like the ones you knocked over last week while chasing a squirrel. Your job at this hour is to observe, but there's not much to see, just the ordinary resurrection of a city that never really sleeps. You turn your head toward the river breeze, breathing in its mix of silt and bakery smoke. Somewhere in the Ziggurat's upper levels, a gong sounds, less a warning and more a groggy hello again from the high priest's assistant. You take another slow step around your patrol circle, your feet crunching over loose pebbles scattered across the sun-dried mud brick. Your left sandal has started squeaking. It always does this after it rains, which it did 3 weeks ago. Historians still argue whether temple guards were issued sandals regularly or just passed them down, but judging by the condition of yours, you're on the wear them till they fall apart plan. Around you, the Ziggurat looms like a layered wedding cake baked out of sun and dust. Each tier climbs toward the gods, though none of the gods have visited lately at least not during your shift. You place your hand on a worn section of the brick, still cool to the touch, and feel the centuries buzzing beneath your palm. Sometimes, you think you can hear the ziggurat breathing, though it's probably just your stomach, reminding you that breakfast is still an hour away. You look up to see the temple's shadow slowly sliding down the courtyard, chasing a lazy cat and 3 half-asleep actors. One of them carries a jug that's already leaking. The other is clearly hungover. You've seen this pattern before. You sigh, adjust your sash, and take another lap around the sacred platform, tracing the same rectangle you traced yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. Still, there's comfort in the repetition. You know exactly how many steps there are on each side. You know the chipped tile near the incense pit. You know the sun always catches on that one chipped corner of the offering box. These things, mundane as they are, keep you grounded. In a world where gods are rumored to whisper through smoke and dreams are considered royal memos, a little brick-and-mortar consistency feels downright revolutionary, and there's something beautiful about the quiet you've learned to appreciate. The city's heartbeat, the call of a rooster several rooftops away, the splash of a merchant's paddle, the rattle of wheels over stone, the soft chanting of an elder greeting the sun. It all plays like a lullaby that somehow wakes you instead. Your shift supervisor, a tired man named Ishbiera, with one eyebrow thicker than your entire arm, makes his rounds. He grunts at you in approval or indigestion. It's hard to tell. You nod back with the appropriate level of sleepy reverence. Neither of you speaks. Words are for later. Right now, the only thing that matters is that the sacred bricks remain unbothered by anything more dangerous than a stray pigeon, or, worse, a visiting official with opinions. You lean on your spear, tilt your head back, and watch the clouds drift like forgotten scrolls across the sky. One looks vaguely like the god Enki, if Enki had a really large nose. Another looks like yesterday's dinner. You're not proud of that one. And so begins another peaceful day in the life of a Babylonian ziggurat guard. No invasions, no earthquakes. Just sunrise, breath, and bricks. You set down your spear carefully, with the practiced indifference of someone who knows no one's stealing it, and reach for the old palm bristle broom leaning against the stair rail. It's missing half its bristles and makes a soft, scratchy sound as you drag it over the first dusty step. Welcome to the thrilling second act of your morning, sweeping the sacred stairs of the ziggurat. Not exactly a sword fight on the battlements. But hey, someone's got to keep the god's front porch tidy. You begin at the bottom, where yesterday's dust has politely gathered like it always does, despite your best efforts. You sweep in gentle strokes, the kind that don't disturb your back too much, and try not to think about how you'll be doing this again tomorrow, and the next day, probably forever. This stairway, one of several leading to the main platform, stretches up like a caramel-colored spine of baked earth. The steps are uneven, in places worn down by centuries of ceremonial sandals, priestly parades, and yes, bored guards like you. As you work, the early sunlight hits the bricks in stripes, making it feel like you're sweeping through a mosaic of gold and shadow. Occasionally, a beetle scurries out from between the cracks. You pause, let it pass, because even bugs probably have a higher rank in the temple ecosystem than you do. There's a rule, unwritten but widely feared, that you Must never sweep too loudly while the priests chant their morning invocations inside the shrine. You're not sure what happens if you do. Some say that God Marduk gets cranky. Others say you just get reassigned to latrine torch duty, which, let's be honest, is probably worse. So, you sweep like a ghost. A very dusty ghost with mild shoulder pain. Acolytes pass by as you work. Most ignore you, a few nod slightly, and one, always the same kid, manages to knock over your broom with his elbow every single day. You've stopped getting mad. Now you just raise an eyebrow and pretend to cast a minor hex. He's started leaving you raisins in exchange. It's a weird dynamic, but it works. Your section includes the main southern stairway, which is technically considered the primary divine approach. Historians still argue whether this was for practical visibility during sunrise, or just because someone in ancient Babylon had a flair for theatrics. Either way, it means your broom sees more sacred sandal traffic than most by the time you finish the bottom half of the stairway. Your arms are warmed up, and your brain has entered that slow, dreamy rhythm: sweep, crunch, flick, repeat. A priest's robe flutters past, the hem brushing your clean steps, leaving a little trail of ash behind. You sigh, then you sweep it up again. Occasionally, you daydream about switching with a guard from the palace districts, someone who might get to polish bronze shields or inspect parade armor. But then you remember those poor souls have to stand next to bureaucrats all day. You, on the other hand, get the steady company of pigeons, whispers, and the occasional temple cat ambush. Speaking of which, here comes Ninkasi. The temple cat. Regal, aloof, annoyed. She glides down the staircase like she owns every grain of sand beneath your feet. Tail flicking with imperial disdain. You pause your sweeping. She pauses too. It's a silent standoff. She squints at your broom as if to say, "That's cute. Now step aside." You do. She strolls past and plops down on the newly cleaned step just ahead of you, instantly shedding a small puff of fur. There goes your progress. You resume sweeping around her like a celestial obstacle. She yawns and begins grooming her front paw, which, judging by the noise, contains secrets you'll never understand. Her whiskers twitch, her eyes close. She's either meditating or judging you. Probably both. From higher up the stairway, you hear the low murmur of an older priest reciting a hymn to Shamash, the sun god. The words roll down the stones like smoke, ancient syllables melting into the background. You catch a phrase about light upon the sacred brick, and look down at your broom. There's definitely more dust than light, but hey, you're trying. You take a break halfway up, sitting on the warm step, and sip from a small clay cup of barley tea. It's lukewarm and faintly gritty, but it keeps your eyelids open and your spirit from wandering too far into nap territory. As you sip, your fellow guard Kadash saunters by, grinning like he didn't just trip on the bottom stair yesterday in front of 3 priestesses and a donkey. "Missed a spot," he mumbles. You gesture with the broom like a ceremonial weapon. "So did your sandals when you face-planted into the prayer mat." He smirks and keeps walking. Friendly jabs are the only excitement you get until at least mid-morning. Eventually, you reach the uppermost section, the stretch right beneath the temple's eastern altar. It's trickier here. The bricks are smoother, older, and the shadows cling more tightly to the corners. You sweep with extra care. avoiding the small shrine recess where people sometimes leave mysterious gifts. A feather, a bone comb, a small doll that once blinked at you, probably wind, but still weird. There's a moment, just one, when the rising sun peaks perfectly over the edge of the topmost shrine and lights up the entire staircase. It doesn't last long, maybe 10 seconds. But in that moment, the whole stairway gleams like it was just built. You pause your broom, you stare, you forget the dust. The ziggurat for those 10 seconds feels alive. Then the light moves. The bricks go back to their usual sleepy color, and a priest yells at you to sweep faster because the goddess Ishtar doesn't like foot's cuff. You finish your task with a few last careful strokes, stepping back to admire your clean, slightly fur-covered handiwork. You lean on your broom like it's a weapon of divine purpose, and give the sky a nod as if to say, "We kept the steps clean. We did our part." And somewhere, maybe, one sleepy little god gives you a thumbs up from behind a cloud. You've barely leaned the broom back against the corner of the stair rail when you hear the unmistakable clatter of hooves. You sigh deeply, profoundly, because you already know what's coming, and it isn't an enemy army or a caravan of precious scrolls. No, it's goats. It's always goats, and not just any goats. These are the temple goats, sacred in theory, ungovernable in practice. You glance down the outer steps and spot the small herd wandering in single-file disobedience toward the eastern gate. Their hooves click rhythmically on the baked stone, echoing just enough to sound important. But they're not. They're just trying to find the fig bin someone accidentally left open last week. Again, your job description, technically, says guard. But the unwritten subtitle might as well read, part-time goat accountant. You trudge down the slope toward the temple yard, spear tucked under one arm like a very unimpressed shepherd. The goats pause and stare at you with the same blank expression you saw on your supervisor this morning. You do a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 7 goats. There should be 8. You curse gently under your breath and look toward the rear corner of the courtyard. Of course. There's the 8th goat paws, up on the altar's edge, chewing something that might be a fragment of ceremonial scroll. You hope it's not the sacred grain ration log again, or you'll be sweeping more than stairs later. You call out, not with authority, but with that pleading tone reserved for stubborn animals and certain relatives. Get down now, not yours. The goat bleats and continues chewing. You wave your arms. The goat hops down, completely unbothered, and prances back toward the herd as if to say, "I got what I came for." Historians still argue whether goats were considered sacred companions, minor divine messengers, or just ambulatory compost bins. Based on personal experience, you lean toward the latter. You guide the group back toward the enclosure near the outer gate. The gate itself is made of palm wood lashed together with bronze nails that always seem to squeak no matter how much oil the acolytes apply. A little sign hangs beside it, a clay tablet treating something like, "Do not let the goats outside." You wonder who it's really meant for. Probably you. As the goats shuffle through, one of them stops and turns back, squinting at the horizon, like it's contemplating its place in the cosmos. Then it sneezes. You gently nudge it forward with the blunt end of your spear. No grand violence, just enough pressure to break through its goatish daydream. It trots inside and resumes chewing something questionable. You latch the gate, twice. Then thrice, you've learned your lesson. One time, the gate swung open mid-prayer, and the entire herd stormed through a bridal blessing ceremony. The bride was not amused. The groom tried to feed them to a passing priest. It was a whole thing. Back at your post, you jot a note on a clay tablet. Goat number 3 appears to be developing a limp. Goat number 7 refuses to eat anything not already stolen. You know the temple scribe appreciates your observational diligence. Even if your handwriting looks like a chicken danced across the clay, you lean back against a column, wiping sweat from your brow with the edge of your sash. The sun is getting higher, and so is the heat. The courtyard begins to bake, and the ziggurat bricks radiate warmth like a preheated oven. You shift your weight from one sandal to the other, trying not to let the straps dig too deeply into your skin. Sandal tan lines are real, and they're not flattering. Kadash walks by again, this time holding a bowl of dried lentils and chewing with the slow determination of someone whose taste buds gave up centuries ago. He offers you a handful. You decline politely. Then watch as he drops several by accident, prompting 2 goats to re-emerge and fight over them. You stare at him. He shrugs. They're sacred goats, he mutters. They deserve snacks. You're about to respond when a priest in a wine-colored robe calls out from the upper steps. Guard. The scribe can't find his goat, the small one with the bell. Have you seen it? You blink. Slowly. Very slowly. The goat with the bell, of course. That's number 2. It slipped away during the offering ceremony last week and hasn't been seen since. You make a mental note to add goat tracking to your growing resume of sacred but deeply unrewarding tasks. No, but I'll look. You call up, trying not to sound as defeated as you feel. The priest disappears without thanks. You scratch your head and glance across the yard, scanning for tufts of fur, jingling bells, or signs of recent goat mischief. The strange thing is, sometimes the goats do vanish without a trace. Some guards whisper that they sneak into the ziggurat's lower chambers, where no one but the priests are allowed. Others claim the goats are taken by the gods themselves in acts of mysterious favor. You suspect they find a hole in the fence and go nibble fig trees near the bathhouse. But the mystery does lend a certain aura to your otherwise very earthy profession. You walk the perimeter one more time, adjusting your belt and idly tapping your palm on the hilt of your spear. Your feet crunch over gravel. Your forehead glistens. You yawn into the wind, and the goats, having no idea you've saved their lives more than once by keeping them away from sacred scrolls and angry priests, just chew, and blink, and chew again. You glance up at the looming steps of the ziggurat, that massive temple of brick and silence, knowing full well that in this corner of Babylon, your duty is not to battle demons or thieves, it's to make sure the goats stay in their pen and the sacred staircase stays swept. Not glorious, maybe, but strangely satisfying. You give one last nod toward the sun, mutter a prayer to Nana, the moon god, just in case, and return to your post. You've survived the morning. Goat census. And yes, you'll probably have to do it all over again after lunch. The scent hits you before anything else. Thick, warm, and slightly sour, like someone tried to make incense out of dried fruit and too much ambition. You instinctively wrinkle your nose as you step toward the lower sanctuary courtyard, where the priests are preparing the daily offerings. It's time for your next duty, incense smoke patrol, and offering watching. Which sounds important until you realize it mostly involves standing still and not sneezing. The offering platform, made of polished limestone flecked with ash and sticky residue from countless sacrifices, gleams in the midday light. A pair of priests in embroidered robes bustle about, muttering instructions to two nervous-looking acolytes holding baskets of squishy date cakes. Ah, that explains the smell. You take your place at the corner of the dais, close enough to see everything, but far enough not to be mistaken for someone useful. It's a quiet kind of chaos. Clay jugs filled with pressed barley beer slosh around. Bowls of sesame oil line the altar. Figs half-dried, half-rotten are laid out in symmetrical rows. Someone places a clay tablet labeled to Enlil, Lord of the Wind, next to a jar of honey so crystallized it may be older than your supervisor. The sun beats down, hot and flat, and somewhere a fly buzzes in, loops around your head like it's tracing a cuneiform insult in mid-air. You spot the head incense priest. A serious man with eyebrows like broom bristles, carefully selecting which resin mix to burn today. Historians still debate what exactly went into these sacred incense blends. Some say cedar wood and myrrh. Others claim it included ground-up seashells and rare herbs from the mountains near Elam. You're mostly sure today's recipe includes whatever made you cough for 2 hours yesterday. As the ritual begins, your job is to stand there and make sure no one interrupts the procession or steals the offerings. Yes, apparently that's happened. A few years back, a particularly bold merchant tried to swipe a bowl of honey after dark. He claimed it was an accident. The temple cat caught him, ironically. Ninkasi was rewarded with her own cushion and a portion of fish every third day. You were rewarded with standing closer to the smoke from then on. The priest lights the incense and, with an exaggerated flourish, waves his hands to guide the smoke toward the statue of Ishtar at the back of the sanctum. The curls of smoke rise lazily, curling in complex patterns that someone will later interpret as divine instruction. To you, they look mostly like upside-down goats, and that one dream you had about falling into a bread oven. You shift your feet, adjusting your weight from one sandal to the other. The heat from the nearby brazier is doing something unpleasant to your leg hair, but you dare not move further back. Yesterday, you made the mistake of stepping into the shadow during offering time, and a junior priest whispered that it was cosmically disrespectful. No one told you what that means exactly, but you'd rather not find out. The fly returns. You try to shoo it with one dignified wave of your hand, which the nearest priest mistakes for a gesture of reverence. He nods approvingly. You accept the misunderstanding. Respect through confusion is still respect, as the offerings are arranged: 3 bowls of dates, 5 loaves of barley bread, 1 cluster of grapes that looks suspiciously wrinkled. You make a mental note of the layout. You'll be expected to log the inventory later with the quartermaster, who insists on accurate counts even if half the food ends up in the hands and mouths of temple mice. Or, on one occasion, the high priest's niece. Apparently, she thought the figs were for guests. You glance to the side where a scribe is furiously etching onto a clay tablet. Sweat dripping from his forehead. His stylus makes soft clicks as he writes out the specifics of today's offerings, including the phrase, "May the gods find this sufficient." You smirk. That's bureaucratic code for "this is the best we could do on short notice." The incense thickens. You try not to cough, a small breeze whisks through the courtyard, sending smoke ribbons dancing sideways across the statues. For a moment, the face of the god Adad appears eerily lifelike in the haze. Or maybe that's just the smoke getting to your head. You blink. It's a statue again. The acolytes bring in a new tray flatbread with strange herbs sprinkled on top. You think you recognize one of them as crushed blue fennel, rumored to soothe both stomachs and temperamental deities. Kadash once claimed the herbs were also useful in love spells, though given his track record, that seems unlikely. A bell rings. Not the warning bell, the small bronze chime that means the offerings have been accepted. The priests bow, the scribes note it, and a general nodding consensus rolls through the courtyard like an invisible wave. You keep your posture firm, though your shoulders itch from standing too straight for too long. Then comes the moment everyone dreads. One of the priests accidentally tips over the bowl of figs. It tumbles off the altar edge and lands splatten. The ground. One fig rolls directly to your feet. You look at it, it looks at you. The priest stares, frozen, as if unsure whether to pick it up or pretend nothing happened. You decide to solve the problem by kicking the fig gently back toward the base of the altar. It smears slightly. The priest says nothing. Smart man. The ritual ends with a flourish of chant and a double clack of the ceremonial staff. Offerings are gathered, not all of them, of course. The temple needs to keep some for divine inspection, but the rest will be sorted, stored, or discreetly eaten later by those with access to the kitchens. You once got a bite of leftover honey bread. It tasted divine, probably because it had been baked for one. As the crowd disperses, your eyes linger on the smoke's last wisps curling into the sky. They fade slowly, mingling with the city dust and heat. You imagine them carrying the day's prayer, upward messages wrapped in resin and ash, delivered on a breeze that may or may not be sacred. You return to your post with sticky sandals and a light cough, but also a strange sense of calm. The offering ritual is done. The gods are fed. The smoke is gone. And once again, no one knocked over the incense burner in like last week. Not bad for a day where your biggest battle was against a squishy date cake. The bell is heavier than it looks. You lift it from its little wooden platform with both hands, trying not to let it clang against your shin. Again, last time it did. The echo startled to priests and a chicken, all of whom took it as a bad omen. You balance the bell's base on your hip and walk carefully toward the sacred stone block near the eastern edge of the Ziggurat's second tier. It's almost noon, which means it's time for the noon bell ritual, a tradition, equal parts reverent and mysterious. You set the bell down with a soft grunt, then pick up the striker, a long rod of bronze wrapped in linen, knotted at the end. You stretch your shoulders, roll your neck, and take your place facing east. The wind rustles your sash, and for a moment you imagine you're in some epic tale, a lone sentinel summoning the gods with divine sound. Then your arm cramps, and the wind smacks your sash into your face. Reality returns. 3 deep breaths. 1 bell ring for the sun god Shamash, 1 for the sky god Anu, and 1 for... Well, historians still argue whether the 3rd strike was meant for Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, or just a general thank you to the divine council. Some believe it's meant to represent the unity of the heavens, earth, and underworld. Others think it was the high priest's idea of lunch hour. Either way, You strike the bell. Bong. It echoes across the stones, a deep, smooth hum that seems to vibrate your bones. You wait exactly 7 heartbeats. You strike again. Bong. A passing acolyte pauses mid-step, placing his hand over his heart. From down in the market streets, faintly, you hear a few voices quiet in response. Even the goats stop chewing, though that may just be coincidence. You count the next 7 heartbeats slowly, then give the final strike. Bong. The third note lingers in the air like warm honey dripping from a slow spoon. You close your eyes and wait until the vibration fades completely before stepping back. No one applauds. No one ever does. But you get a few satisfied nods from the nearby priests, which, in Ziggurat terms, might as well be a standing ovation. You place the striker down gently and carry the bell back to its nook. It's set on a small worn platform under a canopy of reeds that squeaks when the wind pushes it. The bell's metal is smooth from years of handling yours and your predecessors. Kadash once claimed the bell predates the ziggurat itself, a remnant from an earlier temple lost in the river floods. You're skeptical, mostly because the bottom clearly has an inscription reading something like, "Property of the Second Temple. Do not remove." You wipe a bit of soot off your tunic and glance toward the shrine entrance. There, the high priest is already preparing for the next ceremonial chant. A priestess with an eagle feather fan waves softly at the shadows, as if ushering unseen spirits toward the altar. You're technically not supposed to watch, but they're not doing anything scandalous unless you count burning coriander leaves without permission. You return to your station and stand again beside the stone wall, where a carved lion watches eternally to the north. The lion is chipped on one side, its face half eroded by rain and time, but still imposing in that silent, frozen roar kind of way. You've named him Gilji. He's the closest thing you have to a conversation partner some days. You lean close and whisper, "Bell duty's done, my friend." No one fainted this time. Gilji says nothing, as usual. You squint down toward the base of the temple. Some kids are trying to peek through the main gate, their noses pressed against the iron bars. One is chewing on what might be a sandal. Another waves at you. You wave back, then remember you're supposed to look stern. So you frown and fold your arms. The child mimics you. You nearly break character with a grin. Suddenly, the quiet is broken by a loud yawn your own. You blink rapidly, embarrassed, and glance around to make sure no one important noticed. A junior priest glares briefly, but says nothing. You mouth sorry and pretend to examine the floor with professional interest. It's not that you dislike the bell ritual. It's a fine tradition. But doing it every day, exactly the same way, without fail even, when nothing's happening, makes it start to feel less divine and more sleepy. Sometimes, as you hold the bell striker, your mind drifts to odd places. What if I accidentally rang it 4 times? What if it broke mid-strike? What if Gilji did answer one day? You shake those thoughts away. The gods probably frown on hypothetical mischief. Still, there's something to the rhythm, to the simple, repeated gesture of calling the divine, even when they don't show up. You've come to find comfort in it. In a world where storms can wipe out harvests, and rulers can demand new temples just because they dreamed about frogs, the bell is constant. 3 strikes. 1 breath, repeat. Kadash joins you, wiping sweat from his brow and flopping onto a nearby bench. You hit the third one too long again. He mumbles, "It's called emphasis." You reply, "It's called showing off." He grins, then picks at a loose thread in his tunic. Think the gods noticed. You shrugged. If they did, I hope they're impressed. A pause. You ever think, he starts, maybe the bell isn't for the gods at all? You raise an eyebrow. What then? He shrugs. Maybe it's for us, so we remember they're watching, or that we're supposed to watch them, or maybe just so we don't forget the time. You look at him, then at the bell platform. I think, you say, it's so we don't fall asleep standing up. Kadash snorts, stands, and ambles off toward the shade. You stay a moment longer, hand resting on the warm stone. The noon sun is fully overhead now, washing everything in flat, bright light. You squint upward, wondering if the gods squint back. Then, you take one last breath, straighten your shoulders, and resume your watch. 3 strikes. 1 day. Infinite echoes. The afternoon heat settles in like a thick wool cloak, and your brain begins to wander. That's when you drift toward the scribe. Benches partly for the shade, partly for the entertainment. Because while guarding sacred objects might be your title, your unofficial job this time of day is eavesdropping on scribe gossip. The scribes, draped in robes too long for their stools, sit in a semicircle under the pergola just off the lower courtyard. Their clay tablets lie in neat stacks beside them, styluses poised like miniature weapons. You lean casually against a nearby pillar, spear tucked under one arm, doing your best to look like you're guarding something crucial, instead of waiting to hear who miswrote divine favor as divine fever again. There's already a heated debate underway. 2 older scribes are locked in a bitter cuneiform standoff. I said Imizu, not Imizu. One means he writes with wisdom, the other means he writes while vomiting. The other waves a clay shard dismissively. Well, maybe he was vomiting. That love letter was awful. You suppress a snort. This is better than temple theater. It's well known among the temple staff that scribe drama runs deeper than the Euphrates between scroll translations, personal poems slipped between legal contracts, and the eternal war over who gets the shady seat. It's a miracle any of them finish anything. And yet, these are the people entrusted with recording the divine will, the king's decrees, and occasionally, very occasionally, your own goat reports. You watch as one scribe scratches furiously on a tablet labeled, "Inventory Sacred Oil." His stylus snaps. He mutters something that may or may not involve a curse on all olives. Another leans over his shoulder, offering helpful feedback in the form of theatrical sighs and exaggerated eyebrow raises. Historians still argue whether Babylonian scribes were trained in royal academies, or just selected for their ability to glare at ink smudges for 6 hours without blinking. You lean against the wall and pretend not to enjoy this little display of bureaucratic warfare. At the edge of the pergola sits Enlilu, the youngest of the bunch, nervously working on a draft of a temple receipt. His cuneiform is too neat, which actually makes him suspicious, like a man trying too hard not to be noticed. You've seen him mess up a name and then try to hide the mistake by stamping the corner with a decorative fish. He still insists it was divine symbolism. He glances up and spots you. "Guard," he says, pushing his tablet forward. Can you read this? You glance at the clay. It says, 2 jars, sesame oil, 1 jug fig wine, 5 loaves. Is that for Ishtar, or from Ishtar? He turns pale. Oh no. One of the older scribes snorts. Congratulations, Enlilou. You just implied the goddess owes us lunch. There's a beat of silence, then laughter ripples through the pergola. Even you chuckle, though you quickly return to your guard posture. Still, you linger. It's not often that you get moments of real connection in a place designed more for worship and record-keeping than friendship. You glance over at the main clay storage wall, where sealed tablets are stacked like ancient filing cabinets. You can practically hear them humming with dusty gossip. One of them, no doubt, holds your own name, maybe from the time you knocked over the incense brazier with your spear, or the week you got caught sketching Gilji, the lion statue, with a smile. There's also a rumor about a forbidden scroll, a love poem written by a priestess and accidentally catalogued under sacrificial procedures. It apparently begins with, like fine barley, your scent lingers near the altar. No one's claimed authorship. No one wants to, not after the high priest recited it during a blessing ceremony, and had no idea he was comparing the god Enlil to a particularly muscular brewer. You spot a new figure arriving at the pergola. It's the royal courier, sweat gleaming on his forehead, carrying a wax-sealed tablet with a blue ribbon. That's palace correspondence, serious stuff. The scribes instantly shift posture like startled herons. Even Enlilou tries to stand. The courier drops the tablet onto the main bench and mutters, from the Queen's astrologer, urgent. The head scribe, a man named Nabubalasi, with a permanent squint and an ink-stained beard, cracks the seal. He reads. His eyebrow twitches. Then he mutters, "This is the 3rd dream interpretation request this month. Someone tell the Queen that seeing a snake and 3 stars doesn't always mean war. Maybe it means snakes and stars." Someone mumbles. You back away a little, your duty drifting again, toward the perimeter, where a shadow is beginning to stretch across the courtyard. The scribe's chatter fades as you return to your patrol. Their voices now murmurs blending with the wind and pigeon wings. You pass the corner where your own reports are. Deposited goat incidents, broom damage, suspicious clouds. The clay box has 1 tablet inside, still wet. You peek. It's your own note from this morning. Someone added a line. Guard seems unusually preoccupied with goat behavior. Recommend dream interpretation. You roll your eyes. The scribes strike again. Still. You smile. Because as much as they bicker and nitpick, they're part of the Ziggurat's heartbeat. Without them, there would be no record of today's rituals. No official count of barley loaves. No confused dream messages from royalty, and maybe no one to remember that a humble temple guard once prevented the goddess Ishtar from being served fig wine in her own name. You nod once. Salute the scribes with your spear like a lazy sundial, and continue your silent, sacred watch. Somewhere behind you, a stylus clinks against clay. Someone is writing again, and maybe, just maybe, you're in the next line. It begins, as most disasters do, in Babylon, with a hiss. A soft, serpentine whisper that cuts through the dusty calm like a string pulled tight. You freeze mid-step, 1 foot hovering above the courtyard stones, eyes scanning the space ahead. And there it is, half shadow, half sunbeam, winding across the base of the outer courtyard wall, like an angry rope, with no destination. A snake, not a divine omen. Not a painted sculpture. A real snake, medium-sized fat, clearly unimpressed by your authority, and, naturally, you've been selected as the unfortunate soul who must escort it somewhere else. There's no training for this, of course. No scroll titled How to Handle Sacred Reptiles Without Being Cursed or Bitten. All you've got is a long stick, questionable confidence, and a quiet prayer that the snake is more philosophical than hungry. Your surroundings. Acolytes pretend not to notice. Priests suddenly find reasons to be urgently elsewhere. Even Ninkasi, the temple cat, usually ready to pounce on anything that slithers, glances at the snake with polite disdain and disappears behind a column. Classic. You take a deep breath. Grip the stick really. Just a broken broom handle with delusions of grandeur and approach. The snake pauses, mid-slide, tongue flickering. It watches you, head tilted slightly, like it's wondering whether you're edible, annoying, or both. You talk to it gently, as if your voice can override its instincts. Okay, friend, let's not make this dramatic. It does not respond, because it is a snake. You nudge the stick toward its midsection, trying to gently encourage it toward the garden gate. The snake raises its head slightly. You freeze. For a tense moment, you and this cold-blooded noodle share the kind of intimate eye contact normally reserved for romantic pottery scenes. You try again, more coaxing than poking. The snake sighs figuratively and begins to slide along the edge of the temple wall, heading thankfully toward the outer courtyard. Crisis averted, until it doubles back. You stumble as it curls into a tight spiral, right beside the ceremonial bench used for harvest blessings. It's now in a sacred space. A sacred space. Great. You glance around. No one's offering help. One acolyte whispers something about serpents being sacred to Ningyashita, the underworld god with a name like a sneeze. We probably shouldn't touch it, he says, or even look at it directly. It's touching me, you hiss back. With its face. Historians still debate whether temple guards were expected to remove snakes or simply protect the priests, while the snakes did, whatever snakes do. Some inscriptions suggest ritual snakes were kept in jars and released during specific ceremonies. Others imply any unscheduled serpent appearances were to be handled discreetly, which is priest speak for find someone with a stick. You refocus. The snake seems content now, basking in the warmth of a sunlit slab. You take a different approach, slowly placing your stick behind its tail, forming a sort of nudge corridor. You tap gently. It moves. You tap again. Miraculously, it begins to leave, undulating toward the garden path, one graceful coil after another. You follow, like a very nervous snake herder, until it slithers beneath the reeds near the irrigation ditch and disappears with one final flick of its tail. You exhale like you've just escaped divine judgment, which, in Babylonian terms, you probably have. A soft clap startles you. Kadash stands nearby, arms crossed, expression unhelpfully amused. You and the snake get along. I think we reached a diplomatic accord, you mutter. He points to the bench. You do realize that was the fertility bench, right? If it sheds there, someone's going to call that an omen. You groan. Just what we need, divine reptile prophecy. As if summoned by sarcasm, The junior dream interpreter appears, a scroll tucked under one arm and eyes wide with excitement. Did someone say omen? No. You and Kadesh say, in unison. But it's too late. The interpreter is already examining the stone, muttering phrases like symbolic rebirth, seasonal renewal, and possible message from Tiamat. You step back slowly, praying you're not about to become part of a new myth cycle titled The Guard Who Upset the Snake God. Return to your post, stick in hand, still vibrating slightly from the experience. You set the stick beside the stair rail just in case it happens again. It probably will. The courtyard returns to its lazy rhythm. A warm breeze stirs the edges of the reed mats. Birds resume their gossip in the roof beams. You lean on your spear and stare into the middle distance, hoping no one decides to assign symbolic meaning to the pigeon that just landed on your helmet. Still, you can't help but feel a little victorious. Not because you defeated the snake. You didn't. But because, once again, you did your job without drama, panic, or venom. You protected the sacred grounds from an unsanctioned squatter. That counts, and maybe just, maybe if, the gods were watching, they'll remember this moment the next time someone drops an offering tray and tries to blame it on unforeseen wind patterns. You stretch your arms, feel the sweat drying beneath your sash, and return to your usual loop around the outer court. The temple is quiet again, for now, until the next serpent decides your shift looks interesting. Your feet know the way now, even in the darkness. Up the same stone steps, past the same fading mural of the goddess Inanna with her lion, you make your way into the upper walkways of the Ziggurat. The scent of warm clay lingers faintly in the air, the same smell baked into your uniform and your memories. And tonight, just like most nights, nothing is supposed to happen. It's supposed to be boring. That's the whole point of being a Ziggurat guard. And yet, something odd has been going on with the grain deliveries. At first, it was easy to dismiss. A small discrepancy in the tally here. A note missing there. Maybe a scribe had nodded off, or a record tablet got smudged in the heat. But then, it kept happening. And not in a chaotic way, more like neat vanishings, as if someone knew exactly what they were doing. You remember clearly how yesterday, the temple accountant's assistant had whispered it during midday rest. We think it's being siphoned. Someone's skimming the tribute. From inside, now, in the blue haze of pre-dawn, your senses feel sharpened. Not like a hunter, don't get carried away. This is still a shift where your most dangerous adversary is probably a sleepy pigeon, but sharpened in that subtle, hair-raising way when something's off. You descend into the storage chambers under the Ziggurat, where sacks of emmer wheat, barley, and sesame are stored in quiet rows like sleeping animals. You count again, still missing 3 sacks. Here's a fun twist. These chambers are only accessed by temple personnel or guards like you, not some thief from the alleys. That narrows it down to a worryingly small list. You consider mentioning it to the overseer, but that would mean extra paperwork, and worse, more meetings. Historians still argue whether such internal pilfering was common across Mesopotamian temples, or just rare blips in an otherwise well-oiled bureaucracy. The reality is, even in a society with clay tablets recording everything from donkey haircuts to how many cucumbers someone owed the moon god, stuff slipped through the cracks. You sit for a moment on a crate of dried onions, scratching the back of your neck. It's not just the grain, either. Someone has been tampering with the oil jars too. And not clumsily, they're resealed carefully, just enough to fool a quick inspection. You begin mentally listing the temple staff with regular access. The chief priest's nephew, suspiciously quiet lately. The young clerk with too perfect hair, overly helpful. Then there's you who sees everything but is supposed to report nothing unless asked. And no one has asked. Another guard older, with teeth like worn pebbles, shuffles in behind you with a jug of watered wine. Anything missing? He asks casually, clearly not expecting you to say yes. 3 sacks. You murmur. He shrugs. Could be missed 3 times in 1 week. You ask, raising an eyebrow. He doesn't respond. Just sips his wine and stares at the wall as if he's memorizing every crack. You decide not to press. This isn't a mystery novel. You're a Babylonian Ziggurat guard, not some cone-hatted detective. But still, you start leaving small pieces of broken reed at the corners of doors, placing 1 pebble atop each barrel, lit tricks from a board guard's handbook, meant to reveal if someone's moved things while you're gone. One time, during a previous shift, a barley sack had toppled and cracked, spilling its contents like a flood of tiny golden bugs. You'd spent half the night sweeping them up and trying to reseal the bag with wax. You remember that mess because, curiously, one of the vanished sacks had sat right beside that spot, like someone was trying to erase your memory by repeating the scene, but you remember. As you scan the room, your lamplight catches something unexpected. A faint scuff on the floor's dust, pattern almost like a dragging mark. You follow it. It curves behind one of the idle plinths, a place no one is supposed to touch. There's a shallow indentation in the walla smuggler's hidey hole. No, just a rat tunnel. A really big rat tunnel, you sigh. Quirky side note. One Babylonian charm for catching thieves involved tying knots in a cord, while reciting a prayer to Nergal, the underworld god. Supposedly, it would bind the culprits' feet no matter where they were. You don't have the charm, but you do tie a few knots in your sash, just in case Nergal's listening. As dawn begins creeping across the city's sky, you exit the chambers and take your post on the balcony. From up here, the city is soft, like a child's sand drawing. Smoke rises lazily from the ovens. Someone is already playing a double reed flute in the plaza below. The baker's apprentice waves up at you with one flour-dusted hand. For now, the grain thief remains nameless. But you're watching, and you've got nothing but time. You've learned to read the city like a scribe reads cuneiform. Not just the official tablets, anyone can do that. You read the rhythms of routine, the echoing calls of traders setting up their stalls, the clop of donkey hooves on packed dirt, the subtle lulls between bells, the exact moment when the bronze smith lets out his 4th sigh of the morning. And today, something is off again. The wrong kind of quiet sits over the temple courtyard like dust on an unopened tablet. It isn't dramatic, just a half-beat to still. The same priest who always mutters to himself as he walks today, he doesn't. The laundrywoman doesn't argue with the soapstone vendor. The doves, usually clustered around the grain crates at dawn, are scattered, almost cautious. You lean against one of the ziggurat's warm walls and observe. You've started to keep a clay slip tucked into your sash to mark these moments. Not for anyone else. Just for you. Some guards make sketches of clay bricks or the ziggurat angles. You jot notes on mood shifts and misplaced jars. You remember the day the chief priest had you deliver a tablet to the house of sacred Mezzusa, quiet hall near the northern gate, where clerks tracked the weights and standards of everything, from silver ingots to sheep wool. The man who took your delivery, an old scribe with eyes like cracked glaze, had whispered, "Every kingdom falls through its grain bins first, not its walls." You hadn't understood then, but now, you think. He meant these little vanchings, these grain sacks, this oil. Things that slip away before alarms are ever rung. Even the temple cats seem confused today. One of them a limping old Tom with torn ears you've nicknamed Enlil keeps pacing near the eastern supply door. You squat beside him and run a hand along his bony back. "What do you see that I don't?" you murmur. He stares at the storage room and mules. You slip inside. Not the main storage, this is a lesser chamber, where the wine jars and dried lentils are kept. You pull the door closed behind you and breathe in faint scent of dates, wet clay, and something new, a hint of wood ash. You move your lantern slowly. Nothing appears disturbed, until you notice a fingerprint smudged on a fresh wax seal. The jar itself remains untouched, but that single, unmistakable impression curls your thoughts. The seal should be perfect. All others are. It had been placed by one of the kitchen boys, and they were trained to do it by rote. Press the temple ring into the wax. Smooth the edges. Say a short chant. But here, a fingerprint. Meaning someone lifted the seal before it dried, or pressed it without authorization. You turn the jar just slightly and realize the twine around the stopper isn't knotted in the temple style. It's tied like a merchant's bundle. You don't touch anything else, just observe. A rat couldn't do that. A pigeon couldn't fake a temple seal. You make another quiet note on your slip and step out, letting the door close as if nothing had happened. Later, on your rooftop shift, you find yourself wondering how many other temples across Mesopotamia saw similar silent thefts. Maybe in Uruk, a temple scribe is noticing the same thing. Maybe in Sippar, another board guard like you is placing pebbles on jars to detect tampering. Across the rivers and reeds, maybe this pattern plays out again and again, never spoken aloud, never written in the official histories. The more you think about it, the more it seems that temples were less about grand rituals and more about very human concerns. Inventory, administration, storage. Temples were essentially the banks of their day, full of edible currency. And like any treasury, they attracted clever fingers that evening. You take your meal of lentils and onion bread in the courtyard beside the moondial. A novice sits beside you, a boy no older than 12, recently initiated. He's chewing too fast, nervous. "Relax," you say, not unkindly. He nods. "Sorry, I'm trying to do it all right. Memorize the chants, clean the pots in the correct order. I spilled barley this morning, and one of the older priests said the gods would smell it and take offense." You chuckle softly. "If the gods are upset about spilled barley, then we're all in trouble. I've spilled half a field's worth just this month." He relaxes, just a little. You watch the sun lower across the rooftops. A cool breeze rolls in from the river. For a moment, all thoughts of smudged seals and silent thefts drift away. The city hums on, a beast of thousands of hearts, each beating to its own rhythm. That night, you check the hidden marks again. One pebble has been moved. Just one. You kneel and examine the barrel. The lid is shifted by a hair. You slide it open and find the topmost layer undisturbed, but the volume beneath clearly less than before. You replace everything carefully, memorizing the exact tilt of the lid. You don't say anything. Tomorrow, you will return with a reed stylus. You'll mark the inside of the lid itself, something no thief would think to check. Maybe you'll catch them, maybe not. But even if you don't, tool know, and that's enough. You're not just a guard anymore. You're the chronicler of things that never make it onto clay. The quiet history of barley, oil, and shadow. The mid-afternoon heat presses down like a lazy camel, refusing to budge. You shift your weight again on the shaded step of the Ziggurat's mid-tier, and glance down at your toes, which seem to be glistening with a mixture of sweat and brick dust. There's a child's toy boat, made of palm frond, stuck in a drainage channel below, bobbing like it's still hoping to find the sea. You lean your spear lazily against the wall and reach into your tunic for the stale barley cake you've been avoiding all morning. It's hard enough to chisel a name into clay with, but it's food. Technically, you're not alone in your shift. Joining you at the same tier is Naram, the part-time guard, part-time amateur poet, full-time sandal complainer. You know, he says, brushing crumbs from his chest, they say the king's steward is afraid of the Ziggurat stairs. Makes his assistant fetch everything from the top level. He chuckles. You nod, half listening, half following a bee that's tracing figure eights through the sky. Naram continues with another speculative tale. This one about the priest's lost donkey, and whether it ascended the sacred levels of its own volition. These shared hours, as mind-numbing as they seem, are where camaraderie begins to stitch itself into the seams of your tunics. The banter is often absurd. Last week, you debated whether the Ziggurat's bricks were cursed to creak under only left feet, but it keeps the mind alive, or at least prevents it from melting in the Mesopotamian sun. Naram shares that his cousin's friend once dreamed of the goddess Ishtar handing out raisins at the top tier. Historians still argue whether dreams were taken as personal prophecies or divine grocery lists. Suddenly, the glint of something moving catches both your eyes. A glimmer below in the temple courtyard. Both of you straighten, squint. A merchant's daughter, maybe 15, is sneaking around the storerooms. Probably chasing a lost goat, Naram mutters, but you both know you have to go check. It's protocol. Down the steps you go, the zigzagging path familiar underfoot. Past the offerings room, and the mosaic tiles still drying in the sun. As you reach the courtyard, the girl freezes. She's not running, just standing awkwardly beside a clay pot bigger than her. You ask if she's lost, and she giggles nervously. I dropped my hairpin, she says. It bounced this way. You nod, but scan the shadows all the same. You find the pin eventually wedged under a slab near a storage bin of date beer jars, and hand it over. She thanks you, bows, and scurries off, sandals flapping. You return to your post with a slow climb. Every level hotter than the last, but there's a small satisfaction in that patrol. The Ziggurat might mostly guard itself honestly. Who's sneaking up a 90-foot stair-step temple anyway? But every now and then, it offers little mysteries. Harmless moments that remind you the job isn't all stillness. Back at the tier, Naram has drawn a crude caricature of the priest in the sand with a fig for a nose. You missed the moment I invented Ziggurat theater, he says solemnly. Limited audience, scathing reviews. The sun dips slightly. Shadows stretch. The hum of insects resumes, now louder than the wind. You both fall into a lull, bellies full of barely satisfying rations, eyes half-lidded, the brick behind your back pleasantly warm. And then comes the voice. It's not shouted, not panicked, just a quiet call from above. The high priest's assistant, waving with a stone tablet in hand. A delivery needs fetching. A ledger must be checked. This is the Ziggurat's other job, sending you scurrying like messengers between levels like ants on a sacred hill. You sigh and begin the climb. Again at the top level, breath slightly thinner, you squint into the glow of incense fires. The assistant hands you the tablet. It's covered in inventory markings. 10 jars oil, 6 bolts of dyed wool, 2 new prayer drums. One drum, apparently, is missing its goatskin. You nod gravely, as if this is the most significant crisis since the Tigris flood. While descending, you wonder who keeps deciding to store drums so close to the pigeons. Last time, one of the birds nested in the hollow and made off with a bead string. That drum still makes a chirp, if tapped just right, back at your post. Naram is deep into reciting an ode he just made up about the noble onion of Eridu. He insists it's a metaphor for divine truth. You suspect he's just hungry again. You sit, wipe your brow, and gaze over the city. Even from here, the distant rooftops shimmer like mirages. Somewhere, a flute begins playing faint, disjointed. Human. One fact you always forget, until moments like this. Babylonian guards weren't soldiers in the sense of always fighting. Your greatest skill is being quietly present. Watching without watching too hard. Protecting without needing to act. You are the calm between decisions. The stillness before drums. The gaze at the horizon that only shifts when absolutely necessary. You lean back, tuck your chin to your chest for a second. The breeze cools your face. Maybe the priest's donkey was onto something after all. The stars come slowly in Babylon, one reluctant pinprick after another in a sky still holding onto its copper blush. You've always liked this part of the shift, the beginning of night. It's quiet in a different way than the stillness of noon, less sleepy, more expectant. As if the city is holding its breath. Tonight you've drawn one of the longer stints atop the third tier. Just below the shrine to Nana, the moon god. You lean against the edge of the stone balustrade and let your eyes drift. There's a slowness in your limbs, but your mind stays alert. Barely. The shrine behind you is already lit with 2 flickering oil lamps and a little bowl of salt. A breeze rolls through, carrying a scent that might be incense or just someone's. Burnt lentil stew. Your only company is a goat. Yes, a goat. A stray one, again. This one is chewing solemnly on a stalk of broomweed, completely unaware of its profound disrespect for sacred altitude. You tap your spear gently against the floor. The goat looks at you, then continues chewing. You name him High Priest. Around you, the night swells gently. Drums echo faintly from a distant wedding celebration. And you can hear laughter from some open-air rooftop further in the city. Occasionally, a torch flickers along the perimeter wall, and a low chant from a neighboring shrine rises, dissolving into the stars. And then, from the corner of your eye, something moves. You turn quickly. Just a flicker. A shape ducking behind the pillar near the offering table. Not a ghost too solid. Not a priest too quick. You approach slowly, muscles stiff from hours of standing. Each step echoes. The goat pauses, it's chewing, and watches you with mild interest behind. The pillar, you find a boy, maybe 12. No robes, just a rough tunic and a dust-streaked face. He's crouched, trying not to breathe loudly. You lower your spear. Not the smartest place to hide, you say softly. He flinches. I wasn't stealing anything. You believe him, actually. He looks too scared. And there's nothing portable up here but salt bowls and sandal dust. You're not supposed to be here, you say, more out of habit than accusation. I know, he swallows. I wanted to see what it looked like. The top, the god places. You sit down slowly on the cool stone, motioning for him to do the same. He inches out, cautiously, and sits cross-legged. His legs are too long for his tunic. He has that gangly look of someone caught halfway between boyhood and something else. You could have fallen, you say, glancing toward the sloped edge of the ziggurat. He shrugs. Fallings everywhere. That's not ominous, or anything. You study him. What's your name, Amy? You from the lower quarter? He nods. You think for a moment. This is not part of your training manual. It's not exactly theft. And he doesn't seem like a spy. He's just curious, bold, foolish. You reach into your sash and pull out the small clay pendant you keep there, smooth on one side, with a crude lion etched on the back. A token you made years ago, during an idle hour in the kill rooms. You hold it up. You want to be up here. You carry one of these. Says you're allowed. His eyes widen. Really? No. You say flatly, but it'll help you pretend. Better. He smiles. A wide cracked tooth grin that hits you harder than it should. You drop the pendant into his hand. But you don't come back without asking. And if anyone asks why you're carrying that, you say the night guard gave it to you, because you helped catch a goat. He blinks. What goat? You point behind. You, that one? The goat bleats softly, entirely unfazed. The boy laughs. The sound bounces oddly off the ancient stones. Not a lot of laughter lives up here. You realize you don't hear it enough. Go on, you say. Climb down the way you came, carefully, and don't trip on the 7th step, it's uneven. He nods, gripping the pendant tightly, and slips off into the shadows, as quickly as he arrived. Just another mystery fading into the dark. You stand again and exhale slowly. The goat is now trying to eat your sandal lace. You shoo it gently. It snorts and wanders to a patch of moss near the shrine. You sigh and return to your post, leaning once more on the balustrade. Your knees pop. Historians still debate whether Ziggurat guards were expected to enforce spiritual discipline or merely discourage livestock and barefoot urchins. Most tablets suggest it was a little of both. You look out over the city again. Lamps twinkle in scattered windows. The scent of roasting garlic drifts upward. Somewhere, a baby wails, followed by a sharp lullaby and a laugh. The moon hangs like a perfect lentil in the sky, full, patient, heavy with stories. You let yourself lean back and watch. Just watch. You wonder what Ami will remember of tonight. You wonder if he'll keep the pendant. Maybe one day he'll show it to someone and claim it's sacred. That it came from the top of the world. that he saw the gods sleeping up there, nestled between bricks and stars. That the ziggurat whispered his name. You hope he doesn't say anything about the goat. By now, the moon has drifted low over the ziggurat, casting its final light across the sleeping city of Babylon. Your final shift before dawn has begun, and it's oddly poetic, still silent, almost ceremonial. The air has changed to its lighter, with just a whisper of the day's heat left clinging to the lowest stones. The torches are dying down, flickering like tired eyelids, and you walk the perimeter slowly, soaking in the final lap like it's your farewell parade. Minus the applause and definitely minus any confetti. The priest from the high temple has already made his final blessing and retired. You saw him earlier, barefoot again. Seriously, what is it with them and ignoring sandals? He offered you a blessing of protection, which honestly feels nice, even if it's the 10th one this month. You pass the shrine again, and for once, you stop. You stare at it. The tiny votive statue, a lion-headed deity with chipped shoulders, seems to wink at you in the dying torchlight. Maybe it's the fatigue, maybe it's something else. You don't question it. Far below, the river stirs faintly. A single barge glides past, the boatman humming a lullaby to himself. You can't make out the words, but the tune is hauntingly soft. You imagine the reeds parting silently as the boat glides forward, and for a moment, you're somewhere else. Not on duty, not on stone, just drifting. Your final ritual is the rooftop watch. You climb the last set of stairs and stand there, high above the city, waiting for the first hint of dawn. The ziggurat stones are cool beneath your sandals. From here, you see not just Babylon but the stretch of the Euphrates, still drowsy under the stars. The city's layout is burned into your memory, now each alley, each gate, each tower. But somehow up here, it always feels new. Like Babylon keeps resetting every night, just for you. Your spear is still in hand, but it rests more lazily now. Your grip loose. You think about breakfast. Flatbread, some barley beer if you're lucky. Maybe a fig. The kitchen boys sometimes sneak you a leftover date. You try not to smile too much at the thought. That's a dangerous path. You know full well the moment you let your guard down. That goat from section 7 will stage another breakout. Goats never sleep, apparently. Neither do wild rumors. Speaking of which, one of your fellow guardsy been reading omens in his lentil soup, again swears that a new star has appeared in the eastern sky. You squint, trying to see what he meant. Is that new, that one there, slightly above the palace dome? Historians still argue whether Babylonian stargazing was religious, scientific, or just a creative way to spice up night shifts. You decide it's probably all three. Humans are nothing if not excellent multitaskers, especially when bored. The temple cat returns. You don't hear her until she's brushing against your ankle, purring like a sleepy tambourine. She places herself at your feet, tail curled neatly, as if she's also waiting for the dawn. You nod at her solemnly. She blinks once, slowly. You wonder if she knows the temple's secrets. She's probably seen more than any of you ever will. She's not talking, of course. Cats never do. But her presence is oddly reassuring. The sun, when it comes, starts as a gentle glow, so subtle it's more a feeling than a sight. You sense the world holding its breath. Then the horizon flushes faintly orange, and the ziggurat stones begin to blush, warming from gray to gold in slow motion. This is your favorite part. It always is. Not because the shift ends, but because it reminds you why you do this. You're the last piece of the night cheer presence, ensures the city wakes in peace. One last round. You walk the edge of the rooftop once more, checking each corner, each shadow. No intruders, no signs of mischief, no goats. Just stillness, interrupted only by the temple cat, now cleaning her paws like she owns the place. Which she kind of does. Downstairs, the kitchen fires are relit. You see tiny curls of smoke escaping the domed roofs. A rooster calls off-key and angry. Someone curses below, probably a baker, burning his first loaf. The day begins. You descend slowly. Each step feels like a farewell, like a quiet ritual of partying. Your sandals tap softly, and the air shifts warmer with each level. You nod to the incoming guard. He looks barely awake, and probably forgot his belt again. Poor guy. He has no idea about the bird flute trick yet. Should you tell him? Maybe tomorrow. As you hand off your spear, you realize you did it. Another night. Another quiet vigil. Nothing dramatic. No invasions. No celestial disasters. Just peace, protected by quiet routines and the stubborn persistence of a ziggurat guard who, despite the goats, the soup omens, and the moonlit hallucinations, kept everything right where it belonged. And now a slow breath out, a stretch of the back, and that long walk home through the softening morning haze, with the scent of baking bread rising to greet you.
you.